are watching the Blueprint Radio Show with DJ Miss Hennessy.
Pleases me more that when I get to speak to an OG, a pioneer, a change maker, and somebody that has really helped to shape the entire hip hop industry here in Australia, not just musically himself, but on radio, and now a newly minted published author. I am so excited to welcome my brother Hau to the show. Welcome and thank you for your time, man.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that wonderful intro. I feel,
You're welcome.
you know, almost like a eulogy. Like,
Not yet. It's kind of like a,
yeah,
this is
right,
your
yeah.
life.
I don't want to hear a eulogy for another 30, 40, 50 years.
No.
So we'll take that to the back. But thank you for having me, and yeah, thank you for that wonderful intro. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, man. Thank you for the time. I know you are a very busy man. You've been, always just about the craft and sort of working quietly for a while,
Mm,
like behind the scenes. When people are like, "Oh, what do you do?" Everybody kind of knows what we do, but they don't really know what we do
mm,
until we arrive at a point where we're like, "Yeah, we got a book. This is what we've been
yeah.
doing."
Yeah, yeah, and and you're right. I think a lot of people, you know, because much like yourself, we like to just keep our head down and just
Yeah,
work, and then our work does the talking for us.
yeah.
So, yeah, that journey, we were talking about before, and we come out with these books, or we talk about what we're up to. But yeah, like you said, really people kind of see the journey, or even see the sacrifices that are made, the many sacrifices that are made to get to this point.
Absolutely.
And it's important to share that, because it really is about sacrifice and dedication, and it's not always about the red carpets and the admiration and accolades and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's important to share that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, for a lot of people, they know who you are, and if nobody knows who you are, I don't know where they've been for the last few decades. But you've been pretty instrumental in our hip hop community here in Sydney and obviously Australia. For people who do know you, they know that your early sort of origin story. You're a hip hop artist yourself.
Mm.
First and foremost, you've done some incredible things as a radio host with Triple J for many years and changed the entire canvas of that particular, sort of frame. And again now, newly minted, publisher of your first book, which is aptly titled King. So before we move on, congratulations, brother, and I give you your
Thank you,
flowers.
appreciate it.
Give you your flowers. Um, so let's just talk a little bit about the origin story of Hal for those
Mm.
who may not really know how you kind of came to be, and happen to dedicate your life to this game called hip hop. How
Yeah,
far back can,
yeah.
can we go?
No, we can go negative 9 months old, if we want to go that far. I mean, in the book, I do talk about my parents, because they're the obviously they are the beginning of my story,
Yeah.
but not only the date of my birth, but when they met, because
Mm,
obviously if they didn't meet, they may not have had me, or had another version of me, and we're looking at a whole different life. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so, my parents, from Tonga, moved to Australia in the '60s, like a lot of people from overseas looking for opportunities, and
Mm,
my mom going to nursing school, and my dad, wanted to join his brothers that were already here, and and they met and fell in love, and had myself and my sister, and I was born in Canberra and grew up in Queanbeyan, which
that's
is on the border of Canberra, but really is a regional rural town of New
mm,
South Wales, and it was an interesting life. I think you don't really know what it's like till you leave it.
Yeah.
Because any kind of environment, you feel like, oh, it's just the world, and then when you leave it, you're like, oh wow, it really was, like because
Yeah.
people in Canberra used to pay us out, like
Wow.
you can't. Oh, you're from Queensland? Like, oh wow, it's like a rough and tumble place, and you're like, oh no, it's just home. But then when you
Yeah.
kind of travel, you're like, oh wow, it really is kind of rough and that. But yeah, and just like a younger sibling, you kind of follow what your sister does or your older cousins, and they loved hip hop. I mean, we grew up on pop, Michael Jackson, Prince.
Right.
We loved reggae, we loved R&B, but then they started getting into hip hop, in the '80s, and I saw it, and I was just instantly fell in love,
Yeah.
and it was like, man, how do I be a part of this, and from growing up in Queanbeyan and watching on TV these little clips of b-boys and b-girls in the Bronx, and it was just like a far cry from
Yeah.
where, first off where my parents are from, and then from where I'm from, and I was just intrigued. I was fascinated, and yeah, just the music, dance, the art, the self-expression, and I just knew I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And as I grew, I just kind of learned more, and selfishly dedicated my life to it.
I like how you say
And fortunate
selfishly.
it is. I think it 'cause we're often taught about selflessness, and
Yeah.
that's definitely an important trait. But I talk to people. I say, but if you're so passionate about, if you are passionate about whatever, and that's what
Mm.
you want to do, you do become selfish because
Yeah.
self-obsessed. You have to focus, tunnel vision, and that's what I was. In high school, I said, yeah, I want to be a rapper, and that's all I wanted to be. And I was whether I didn't know I was going to be a rapper like 10, 20 years later, but for that moment, that's all I wanted to do, and that's what made me happy. And even growing up in a town where people would pay you out because you listened to
Yeah.
to that music, and
Right.
and you're just like, oh, whatever, this is what I love. And it's funny because I grew up with a lot of kids that did that. Not too bad, but they just say, "Oh, the hip hop stuff." They used to call me house rapper,
Oh
and
wow.
but then a few years later,
Yes.
they're like listening to it, and I'm just like, eh.
Last love. Loves on them.
Yeah, so yeah, so it's been an epic journey
Yes, it has.
of falling in love with this music and culture, and and as I was just saying it the other week, like as deep as I am in this music and culture, and in this country, I do acknowledge I am a visitor still
Yes.
in this music, in this culture, and in this country, and
Yeah.
that forever has to be acknowledged, and continuously like pay tribute to
Thousand
to
percent.
to peers and to those that came before me. So
Yeah. But you know what, how I think, that's that. I think that's the beauty of, and dare I use the word vanguard here, right? And
right,
I kind of go, what? But I think we, as in our sort of, not even the age group, but the fact that, the level that we've all come in on, and there's a group of us,
yeah,
there's a whole plethora of us that back in the very time period that you were talking about, when hip hop was just not even a mention on a radio station here, right? We were finding out about it through, it was like a dirty little secret that when you found out about
yeah,
it, you were like,
yeah. You
oh,
didn't want to play it too loud either, like
exactly. Because you fear that, people, like you were saying, people used to make fun
yeah,
of you. And I mean, look, I went through the same thing in high school. And then becoming almost this sort of rebellion where we were like, yeah, nah, I'm going to be a
yeah,
rapper. I'm going to be on radio. I'm going to keep playing this no matter
yeah.
what. I look,
And the music itself, I think that was part of the appeal. It was very rebellious, very
absolutely,
DIY, anti-establishment. It was dangerous, and you just like, oh, and
absolutely.
then it spoke to you as that generation. You're like,
Yeah,
oh, this is my music. Like
that's
this is
it.
what I gravitate towards. Yeah,
That's it. And I think, I look at, again, you've dedicated years to this. And I've sort of watched you, from the wings. Both of us having been in radio, simultaneously in different sort of echelons of it, but watching you grow and watching you do all the things that you inadvertently said you were going to do, and to the great heights that you've done it. You kind of look at that and you look at your peer and you go, man, this is the shit. Like, this is, you've
Yeah.
arrived now. But it was never it was always with humility, and just with that, like you said, that focus, and that this is what I want to do, and I don't know anything else, and this is what I'm dedicated to. And I think
Yeah.
that's where that selfish thing becomes selfless, because
Yeah.
you've given so much to building this community, this industry up, to now where you go on and you say, Hau drops his gems on Instagram. People are Snapchatting that, putting it here, putting it there. How does it feel when they like repost your quotes? I've seen a
Yeah.
couple of things. Does that kind of hit you a bit like, whoa?
Yeah, it does bit because I do, because they're spur of the moment things. It's,
Yeah,
I'm not like a lot of people who they kind of feel like you know kind of really think about these
yeah,
quotes and when they're going to post it. They really are just like from the heart and spur of the moment. And and I think knowing that you have to accept the energy that comes with it, whether people really resonate with it or
yeah,
people really hate it,
yeah.
but I think the important thing is it's your truth.
That's it.
And it's like the book, like my wife was saying, like, regardless of how well it does or doesn't do well, like, it's your truth, and it's
That's
out there in the universe for people to take as they take it. And
it.
I think once it leaves your hands, it's out of your control anyway. So I think, I'm always about uh because like you would know, we just didn't have people, in certain spaces that we could look to or reach out to. And I just knew that if I got to that kind of a position, I wanted to be that person that people would be like,
That's
feel
it.
like they could ask me anything or advice or
Yeah,
criticism, or even just to be saying it, a representation,
that's it.
and that's yeah, very big for me. So it does, it is kind of strange doing all
Hmm.
these interviews. And I love talking with people,
Hmm.
and I love talking about the artists I work with. But yeah, when I start talking about myself, I always feel
Different.
like, yeah, it's like,
It hits different, huh?
yeah, I
It
just
does.
like, yeah, I mean, it is wonderful that people are invested in the story, but I still feel like not uncomfortable, but kind of a bit
Yeah,
shy about
I
like
totally feel you.
emphasizing that kind of thing. Yeah,
And I also think it has a lot to do with obviously that position of, having been on radio for so many years too. It was always your role to unearth the next artist, or
yeah,
interview this person, or give that person their flowers. And that's the role of your radio. You're there to inform, educate, inspire, do all those things. And when
yeah,
the microphone is turned to you, it's almost like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
this isn't how this game is played.
Yeah,
We
no,
ain't
that's not
talking
about
about.
me. It's about them. Yeah, and you're right. Like you pointed out that when selfish turns to selflessness, there's a time where you stop wanting to be the man. Because that's
Mm,
how you enter the game. Like as a woman or man, because you had to. You really had to
yeah,
be that confident in order to break away from the pack and to be seen. And then as you grow older, you learn and things become a different priority.
yeah.
You start to realize, like, oh, helping other people actually feels
Oh man,
better,
isn't
like
it
it
though?
fulfills you. And that's what excites me, like to be able to use the platform that I do have and be like, oh, I should check out these people, like, and
Yeah,
because I know what that would have felt like for me if I had that. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't have that on a peer level, but someone that was like
yeah.
two generations. I can imagine like a
1,000%.
teenager
Yeah,
being like, "Oh, check out this guy," just check out this girl. She just finished high school with this new
that's
song. And I
That's
just know that would be a moment. So I just try and, I enjoy those moments
yeah.
to see people have their wins and people have their first spin on radio and they
Yeah.
record it and they post it. I love that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know that joy.
And I think I think that's what keeps us in this game for as long
Yeah,
as it has.
100%, 100%.
I don't, sort of get to talk to a lot of, radio people. We're not, a lot of us aren't big on the interview thing, like you've just said.
Mm.
And, we're always interviewing people. But I think when you speak to people in that position of always looking for the next person to help, or, that sort of, like ushering into the next
Mm.
it's just pure, like there's like a purity that sort of comes out
Mm.
of like what you've just said, knowing that you've given somebody their first spin on your radio show, or seeing the post where they're like, oh my god, I'm going to be on the show tonight
Mm.
and thank you. Like, it's just, yeah, I think that's why we do what we do. um
Yeah,
and it sort of it
keeps
keeps,
you grounded.
yeah, thousand
You know.
percent, thousand percent.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about how that ushered in for you, because obviously you did mention wanting to be an artist yourself. So you started the artistry side before you got into helping the artist.
Yeah.
So can we talk about how in his, arrival sort of stage of being an artist, how did that come about?
Uh, Wanting to become an artist
Yes,
myself.
yes.
Um, yeah, like I mentioned before, when I first saw, you know, one of the first, some of the first clips were like Malcolm McLaren and Herbie Hancock and Blondie and things like that that had that hip hop flavor. It
Mm,
wasn't really like a proper hip hop song. Shaka Khan, I Feel For
yeah,
You, those kind of songs. And I think it wasn't until the message, like Grandmaster Flash, my mind was blown and just loved the music. And then in high school, yeah, as I mentioned before, it started, as you do when you're listening to hip hop, like I was rapping along to Big Daddy Kane, to Ice T, and Biz Markie and all these artists. Then you start writing yourself and like, oh wow, I can write a little bit, even though you kind of look back and you're like, oh wow, I was just trying to be the Australian version of Big Daddy Kane. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And
yeah,
you emulate your heroes. But yeah, and then it was because I love graffiti and I love DJing and I love the b boy b girl aspect, but rapping was something uh I really took to, and it's interesting because I was a very shy kid,
yeah. Because
but
rapping
then
is a
when
hella confident
yeah
thing to
yeah
do, man. Like,
yeah, but when it's strange because but when I was behind the mic, I was
yeah,
totally different,
different. Yeah,
and as I grew and I got perform live, people that knew me like for so long and then would see me on stage and they'd be like, I can't believe it's the same. Even my mum would say like, I can't believe it's the same person.
yeah.
I just found a certain comfortability on stage
That's what
and
I love.
in the studio. And yeah, just again, it was just a love and a passion. And you didn't know where that was going to lead to.
Yeah.
You just did it because you love to do it.
Yeah.
And I was
And
very
at the
fortunate that,
time,
yeah,
and sorry, and at
yeah,
the time when you sort of kind of made your breakthrough, with your crew, how difficult would that have been back then too? Like, of course,
yeah,
with hip hop being on that cusp of not really being taken seriously as
yeah,
internationally recognized genre. And then, of course,
yeah,
Australia has its own weird relationship with Aussie
very,
hip hop and that whole thing.
yeah.
What was that like? I'm really interested to know from your viewpoint. What was that like trying to break through at that stage and then having to deal with obviously the culture side of it and the colorism that's attached to that whole hip hop
Yeah.
conversation back then? What was that like for you?
It was, looking back, you do realize, oh wow, it was quite a struggle. But
Mm.
when you're doing it, you don't really notice that. I mean, you do
Right.
notice things like I mean, you mentioned like hip hop was still looked at as a fad.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I mean, that's we're talking about hip hop from America and like great hip hop artists, and they'll still look like, oh, it's gonna probably disappear in a few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So you think that's the attitude already towards the greats. Like, what are they thinking about us? And it had a lot of kind of difficulties, like, you can't rap, you're not American, you're not black. It was part of that. And then there was
Yeah.
the internet wasn't like the internet was.
No.
People didn't have smartphones.
Yeah.
uh,
It's a lot harder.
yeah, like there was no cable, no cable TV. It was definitely restricted. But the beauty of it was, if you were into hip hop, you were like into it because you loved it, not because it was the cool thing. And
Absolutely.
then there was that, you might be at a jam or a gig and it might be like 50 or 100 people, small, but everyone loved it.
Yeah.
The people that were really in it because they were passionate about it. So that's what drove us to continue with it, was knowing that these small pocket of people were into the same things that we were.
Yeah.
And really was a beautiful time, because we had record stores.
I know.
That we, man, sound like real old, like, back in the days, the record stores, like,
It's the
but it
purest
really
thing, though.
was, like,
It
yeah, because you
really
had like
was.
Soul Sense, and you had
Yeah.
Central Station, you had Next Level Records, you had Anthem Records, and
And
you could go there, and then you could even hang out there for 2-3 hours talking to the person behind the desk, or someone would walk in and be like, "Oh, you're DJ so and so," and then you
yeah,
talk, and then you look through the records, and the person behind the counter would be saying, "Oh yeah, you should check out the new." It was that, to me, was the ultimate, and a period that I wish, you know younger generations was able to experience, because it was a
absolutely.
really different time. I mean, they have a lot of things now, they have a lot of access to knowledge and resources, but
Yeah.
that kind of human interaction
That's
was
why
beautiful.
I love hearing how you've how you've pieced that together, because that's why I always say it's the hip hop community, because it had
Mm,
that community feel, right? You say
yeah.
you went into like Anthem Records, you could hang out, the DJs would come in, they'd be spinning
Mm,
records, listening. You'd be it was like that was how we networked.
yeah, and you're feeding off that energy too, and especially someone coming from Queanbeyan to go into these, like, the big city of Sydney, and then seeing like your DJ, your Peter Guns, or like all these other
Yeah,
people, like, and to experience that as a small town kid, it was mind blowing. And then going to the clubs and be like, wow, look at all these girls. You know what I mean? And the DJ was playing the joints,
I feel you. Yeah.
and people were like, it was really about the music and the groove, like, and there was no smartphones to be recording yourselves, like,
No, it was real.
like, to look cool. It was there. You wanted to dance, and maybe talk to the opposite sex, and like some people wanted to fight, but it really was there because people wanted to enjoy the music and the company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what else I loved, and again, like the picture that you're painting is exactly how it was for so many of us who were, the beginnings of building
Mm.
this industry, this community here. It was when we got to know who the major players were. I used to enjoy that. You'd go to a listening party, and Hal would be sitting in there, and it was always in the back corner, keeping cool. You was always just keeping to yourself. And I remember the first time I was introduced to you, I think it was at the TI, the listening, when TI was
Oh, right,
around.
right,
And I don't know, I mean, I know we must have met before that, but I remembered being introduced to you. And I said, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you, I'm Maxine." And you were like, "Hey, sis, yeah, I know you. I know you." And I'm going,
right.
how does Hal from Triple J know me?
Oh man, we know you, man. We know your track record, sis. Like,
But you know what I'm
you.
saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
we would just, it was always so dope to be within those spaces, and just kind of see everybody just sort of take on their role, and do what they did. But still, I always used to have that element of, "Oh, man, I just met Hal, like, oh my God, like this dude's done so much cool shit." But we never acted like that in front of each other. But I remember the take home
Yeah.
was always, man, that was huge for me, knowing your history before that. But I always marvel at things like that, and that sort of point of where everybody networked, and you see each other now and you kind of go, wow, this is where we're at, but we remember where we
Yeah,
came from, and I think
yeah,
that's important. I really.
yeah. And I love that we're sitting down having this conversation now in 2022. Like talking with you and people like MC Trey, and like people from older generations. I love that we're still doing our thing,
Yeah,
and that inspires me, and I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that and respect that, but also acknowledge that we can still learn from the young ones
yeah,
coming through.
yeah,
That keeps us young in a way.
absolutely.
Um, yeah,
Absolutely. So, all right, with how the rapper all of a sudden sees himself um, hosting the hip hop show on Triple J. Maya Jupiter, shout out to Maya Sis, did such an incredible job for many years with that position. And
yeah.
whenever you pass on the torch, people are like, oh, who's going to do this? Rah, 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 rah. And then, obviously yourself, it couldn't have been um, handed over to a better person to be able to take
Thank
it
you.
into the next like up to the next level. How was that role for you? What how did it sort of come about? Was it something that was sort of come about like with absolute certainty, this is going to be for the next 10 years of my life, or was it more, oh, I'll see how it feels?
Nah, yeah, I think like I was saying before, like you just wanted to be a rapper. That's all I wanted to be.
That's it.
That was all I was. I was gonna die a rapper as far as I was concerned, and it's something I talk to a lot of like people younger generations. Like when these
Mm,
kind of opportunities come, you may not know where it's gonna take you, but sometimes you just gotta take it. And
yeah.
radio was one of those. I was that was never in the plans to be a
Wow.
presenter. And I was again, can't thank Maya enough, for kind of checking in when she was doing the show, and she would, go off the tour, or she would have a holiday or whatever.
Yeah.
She would ask me to fill in a couple of times, and that was super fun. I was like, yeah, of course I would. But I just took it as that. It was just like a guest host, and it wasn't until she decided to move to LA, and ABC said, "Oh, we're looking for a new host. Did you want to, submit a demo?" And I was like, oh, to be honest, like again, I knew it was opportunity, but because I was still an artist, I
Yes.
was a little bit reluctant.
Yeah.
Like what's that dynamic going to be like?
Yeah.
Are people going to see me like, oh, he's just a radio host now? Like
Right.
he's not a rapper. And then the thought of, okay, if I do become a host, does that mean like Triple J is not going to play my music? Like
Right. Yeah.
what's going to happen? So there's a lot of thoughts that were going through my head. But again, it was like, man, I just don't know if this kind of opportunity will come up again,
Yeah.
and I'd be kind of stupid of myself not to explore it at least for a year or two.
Yeah.
14 years later, I was still there. But yeah, and, very thankful to the Triple J management and the team. Like, the I was one of my main concerns was not only will they still play my like calls and music, which
Mhm.
they were, but also being able to play what I wanted to play
Yeah.
and not
So,
them. And they were like, no, we know what you do, so we just want you to do it. And I
yeah.
was like, okay, cool. And that it was a tremendous responsibility, and one that I wholeheartedly wanted to take on.
Yeah.
I knew it was an opportunity to shine light on emerging talent, but also I knew it was like you said, like Australia's had a kind of a weird relationship with hip hop,
Mm.
and I knew it was a platform that I could educate
Yes.
as well. Like pay tribute to like to the 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 ones that kicked it off,
Yeah.
and the ones that came before us. And I was able to be like, take it back to these beautiful eras. In its in its infancy,
Yeah.
and educate people of Australia. Like, yeah, cool, we have our own scene and it's cool and everything, but you have to know where this comes from.
Oh
And
man.
that's oh, that's what always hip hop to me was always about learning.
Yes.
And I would learn, listen to Public Enemy, I would listen to De La Soul and hieroglyphics, and they'd say all these cities, and I'm like, oh, what's a borough? Like, and then when I finally got to New York, I would look at the subway and I'd be like, oh wow, it's
Oh,
Queens, and oh wow, like
yeah, man.
Flatbush, and and that's what I knew I wanted to do as well, was kind of educate the listener, and make sure that we acknowledge that this is a black culture, this is black music.
Absolutely.
We're just doing a variation of it, but we must know where this comes from.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, like I said, I mean, and I asked you that with a bit of a giggle, going, knowing that, yeah, I'm just going to try it out for a year, and then
Yeah,
go
yeah.
fully steering ahead for 14 years.
Yeah, I
You
was like,
know,
oh, you're gonna have to fire me now.
yeah, that's it. Like, dig my heels in, get rid of me now, would you? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
There would have been some challenging times within that 14 years, obviously,
Mm,
too. And as a radio host, it's not just about music. We're also representing the culture, and we're
yeah.
also representing people who might not understand the culture. We
Mm.
have to, again, like you said, educate, but not come across too preachy either. Like, it's a
Yeah,
fine
no,
line,
exactly.
right? You don't want to
Yeah,
be
it is.
sort of heavy-handed, but you've done it like just seamlessly, right? And you've
Yeah.
done it with representing not only the hip hop culture, but also waving the flag for your own culture, your own
Mm,
Polynesian, culture, and kicking open the door for artists from that culture to be able to come through and have their voices heard. So
mm.
there's a lot of pressure there, but you've done it quite how it appears, but we know it's not seamless, right? We know it's not seamless, but you've done it with great aplomb, if I can use that word, because it's
Oh, I appreciate that. I
yeah,
think, uh again, I think it might even be a bit of ignorance, to be honest. You kind of like, you know, it's a bit of ignorance mixed with passion. I think
yeah,
you don't really think about it too much. You just know it in your heart, like it's something to do,
yeah,
and regardless of the reaction, um, which you kind of just cross that bridge when you get there.
yeah, yeah,
You just know, like, okay, I need to shine a light on these artists. Like, these voices need to be heard. These voices need to be empowered. And I mean, I was always conscious of the listeners, and tried to mix it up with tunes that people knew. But I really did try and use that platform as to kind of educate and expand the horizons of your average hip hop listener. Like,
yeah,
oh, if you like this, you probably like that.
yeah,
And again, like, yeah, and and telling it in a loving and passionate way, like you
yeah,
said, it's a fine line between coming across preachy,
yeah,
but I think when you're so passionate about it, you take it as that.
yeah,
Like, and that's the one thing a lot of listeners would say, like, oh wow, you're so passionate about music. and
yeah,
and I think it becomes endearing, or like almost infectious. So
absolutely.
even if you don't agree or don't like it, you kind of accept it because it's like, oh, it's coming from a good place,
It. And it's that pure intention, and I think that's
Yeah,
where you can go no wrong when the heart delivers with pure intention,
yeah.
right?
I couldn't agree more. That's something else I tell, like, younger generations. I say, like, if you move with good intentions, um, you'll never lose. You
That's
may
it.
not always get the win, but you'll never lose. Because
That's it.
you know what I mean. Because you always walking with love. You're walking with your heart, and
That's it.
sometimes, like I say, you don't always get the wins, but
Mm.
because you're moving with good intentions, you can't go wrong.
Well, that's it. And I think that's why
Yeah.
conversations like this are really important, because obviously you are somebody that a lot of a lot of people, young, old, whatever the persuasion, would look up to because of the position that you've held. Even though for you, it's just been it's been what you've wanted and what you've done with with great love and great empathy. For others, they would look at you and go, oh, man, I'd kill to do what Hal's doing, or
Mm.
oh my God, it's the destination, and again, not fully understanding or appreciating the journey. And
Yeah.
I think when you hear the journey, and it's in all of its ups and downs, you understand why that arrival is so much sweeter, right?
Yeah.
Now, you've arrived at the next level of your career, 14 years at Triple J, and just last week you let the hip hop world
Yeah.
know that you're stepping back. Dare I say, stepping back, ending that relationship. How can we um, how can we speak on it tonight? Are you
Yeah.
done?
Yeah. I think it's just stepping away from the mic, because I'll still be involved, with Triple J
Yes.
and with hip hop in little ways, like mentoring and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been and also I'll still be working on Double J, the sister station, doing a show.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so I won't be fully, separating from them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just with that announcement, yeah, kind of really
Hit home.
solidifies that kind of departure. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
still very emotional about it. It's funny because I did a post and I saw a lot of comments, and I couldn't work myself up to to reading them.
Yeah.
And kind of start, I'd read one or two, and then I'd feel like quite choked up. And my wife's like, "Oh, have you read them yet?" And I'm
Oh
like,
man.
"No, no, yeah, I want to sit down and kind of just go through them and take it in." And she's like, yeah, I was crying when I was reading it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that doesn't really help." Like,
Gee, thanks. We keep talking about
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. So,
But
I'm very thankful for the
that's
outpour of love.
yeah, I mean, look, that's the community's love letter to you, man. Like,
Yeah,
and it's hard to read those things, but like people who know you know that that's not the end of anything. It's just, you're going on, it's
yeah.
all
It's
leveling
just
up.
another chapter, another
It's the level
journey.
up,
Yeah,
man. That's it. That's it. So
yeah. It's
what
funny because when those posts started coming up, I got a text from a friend, and he's like, "Oh man, I thought you had died." Like, 'cause he just, he started seeing because that's the same when I kind of scroll through Instagram, and if I see someone's photo,
yeah,
my heart kind of like, oh, and
stops.
you're like, oh no, okay, it's still alive. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and we were kind of laughing about that, and the person I was with was like, well, at least when you do die, that you know what they would say.
That
I was like,
funeral
yeah,
gonna be lit.
true. Yeah. And yeah, at least I get to see the love now,
That's
as
it.
opposed to
Get
when
your
I
flowers now, bro.
kick the
Like,
bucket. Yeah, exactly.
but yeah, no, I listen. I think when everybody sort of saw it, it was, yeah, it's bittersweet, but it's just, again, it's the game of evolution, right? And you
It
can't
is.
stay in
Yeah.
the same place all the time, even
Yeah.
though that's the place that kind of birthed so many things for
Yeah.
you. And it's
Yeah.
I feel I go through many death cycles within my own evolution in this industry
Mm.
all the time. And I think COVID had a lot to do with it too. So many of us were shut down for so many reasons, whether it was DJing or, radio stations were closing. You couldn't go back in the studio. You had to do stuff from home. And it really stifles that creativity that we all live off. And that's why we've been doing
Yeah.
this for so
And
long.
then that
But
human interaction, like sharing that energy is,
man,
yeah.
I can't do radio at home. Like, I mean, this is the next level for me to be able to connect and continue my storytelling journey, because so many other things had halted for me during that
Mm.
process. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
constant um, evolution of redefining oneself,
Yeah.
one's
That's it, redefining.
right,
That's
right.
it. Because we often say, like, we can talk about the things we achieve, but that doesn't necessarily define you
No,
maybe at that moment. But I loved what you said, like redefining, because that's what it is.
That's
Like
it.
that is like evolution. You kind of, yeah. No, that's awesome.
Absolutely. So obviously you've mentioned a couple of times in this conversation the artists that you've worked with. Now you've also gotten into the business of creating artists
Yeah,
well during the time. So can we talk a little bit about that? Is that still a passion project of yours? Is that still something that you enjoy doing? The fruits of your labor, that type of stuff. Where
yeah,
where are we going?
yeah. Definitely, I love it. Like shout out to Katrina. She plays a big part of my story, and she brought me into Sony one year, and we talked about this label, like starting a label, and I thought
Mm.
that was really exciting to have the opportunity to, because I had the radio to be able to
Yes.
support the artists that way, and now I had an opportunity to really get my hands dirty with developing, like finding young artists and
Yeah.
developing them, and investing time and some finances in there, and being a part of their story, and
Yeah.
even that story, I tell my artists, I say, look, you're a rapper or you're a singer right now, and you have to be the best version of that right
Yeah.
now, but also understand this is just the start for you. You know, you don't know where this is going to lead, and to be open minded about all those things. But yeah, that's still a very big part of my life,
So,
and to be able to share the knowledge and experiences that I've had over the years, because that's what it is. That's what it's
yes.
about, isn't it? It's about acquiring all this knowledge, and I read somewhere too. It's like there's no use learning all of this. Like learning all this knowledge is useless if you don't like share it or put it
Yeah.
into practice.
Yeah.
It's like why he's gonna die with you, and what use is that? Probably
Absolutely.
serves you all right, but then the real fulfillment, like we mentioned before, is being
Yeah.
able to share that and put time and energy and belief into these young artists, and even, I mean, not only artists but just people that want to get into the industry
Mhm.
as a manager or as an A&R or as a someone in media, um, and I just love to be able to be in these spaces and um, be like a representation
Yeah.
of my community, and because we never, again, we never had that growing up,
Yeah.
we never saw people that looked like us and be like, oh wow, so that's possible. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
Like,
We never had that, so we had to do it ourselves, which is cool too, because we got to learn things and built certain resilience.
yeah.
You know, but it's like being a parent. You bring in
It-
these people into the world, and you kind of give them your best advice, and then you kind of send them off into the world and
Yeah.
let them create their own legacy. And that was part of you know leaving the role at Triple J as well, was being able to give the next presenters their chance to
Yes.
build their legacy.
Yes.
Which is important. Because like I joke around, like I'll you have to fire me from living here. I just love the role so much.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's understanding the nature of the culture and the business. Like you have to step aside for others
Absolutely.
to come through and build their own name, their own legacy, and that's exciting to me to see that. And,
There.
and it's not about being the next Hal. It's like being the new
But
you.
that's it.
Like yeah.
That's exactly it. And I think um again it's just that it's part of that journey. It's part of that evolutionary journey of, whether you're an artist, whether you're a radio journalist, writer, whatever it is, there's always that sort of level up. And I think looking at your career, which is it's been like a masterclass, to be honest. Um, no, it has. Kudos to you, bro. Like, it's been so damn inspiring, and to and you've you've fallen into positions where, you know, it's been opportunity and you've taken them, but you've also gone, right, well, is this for me now? Let me step aside, let me do this, let me do that. It's all been that integrity based work, right? Which I think
Yeah.
what then opens up the next level for you. And writing a book, you know, from, you know, somebody that has written, you know, a couple, it's a
Yep.
very it's a vulnerable position to be in, to bare your soul on paper. And I was so, I can't tell you how excited I was when I saw your post and I saw that initial post, and I was like, man, I love that. I'm sure your friends would have known, like your close friends and family would have known you're writing a book, but the rest of the world didn't. And I love that. It just arrived.
Yeah.
It's here, right? But books don't
Yeah.
just arrive, man. Like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus, that's like a whole, I don't know if you berated yourself through your process. I know for me it was a massive soul cleansing um
Mm.
journey, but that is major. And I'd love to know what your journey was like writing that book. I'd love to know.
Yeah. It was yeah, like you just said, it's one hell of a process, you know. And I think, you know, besides, you know, kind of reliving some great memories and not so great memories, I think one of the greatest things that came out of doing this book was reconnecting with people. And you know, I talk about the early days of, you know, my formative years, like year 10, like 15, 16, 17, and I connected with this group, like they were in Canberra, and we were all very like-minded. Like we wanted to dress the same, we listened to the same
Yeah.
music, we went out to the same underage clubs, and there was these two boys in particular, JJ and another boy called Daro, the two Tongan boys, and you know, we were very close. Like we danced together, we wrote raps together, you taught girls together. You know, do as you do, like you're 15, 16, you know, 17, and but then, you know, as you do, you kind of grow apart when you kind of enter new circles or whatever. So I hadn't talked to them for a, you know, a good 20, 30 years or something.
Wow.
And, you know, I was telling this story about those years to my co-author, Christopher Riley, and he's like, "Oh, that's great. That's great. Oh, it'd be good if we could talk to them." And I said, "Yeah, I haven't talked to them like, you know, around 30 years." And he's like, "Oh, is there a way that you could?" And, you know, and it made, and I didn't want him to call them and be like, "Oh, I'm writing this book on how,"
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Why couldn't he just,
That's it.
you
Yeah.
know, like why couldn't he like ring and tell?" So I wanted to make that initial contact, and it was beautiful. You know, like
Wow.
it really did feel like that we had just hung out the week before, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, it's still very beautiful, you know, man, and you know, went through our own lives, but still connected in
Yeah.
those years. And so yeah, reconnecting with them, even with, you know, Coolers and Danielson, you know, we were making music since '92,
Yeah.
and you know, we're just in each other's pocket, you know, and we had our ups and downs, and we made our last album in 2010, and our relationship got so, you know, any kind of relationship that's been through
Mm.
together that long.
Yeah.
That's what, like 8, 20, what? No, 18 years. And, you know, I think we had just had enough of each other at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
So we, again, grew apart, and we hadn't talked for 10 years, but, you know, see each other occasionally, but it wasn't, you know,
Right.
we were just giving each other space, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, we reconnected through his book, and like we could talk to each other differently, you know,
That's
because we had outgrown a lot of, I guess, the resentment and you know,
yeah.
the kind of the bad things about the relationship, and really focus on the great things that we did, and you know, really kind of learn to love each other again, you know, like
Oh,
um, yeah, and you know, and he lives in Melbourne now, and every time I've gone to Melbourne, we've seen each other, and it's just different energy. Like, you know, I guess it's because we've grown as well, like grown
yeah.
as men and as people, and yeah, through this book, you know, we've reconnected, and that has been I mean, obviously, like having a book and for the kids and the grandkids, but that reconnection was very special for me.
That's what's up. That's what's up, man. Were you nervous when before it was
Yeah,
released? Yeah.
yeah, very. I mean, even before posting about it, I was like,
Yeah.
it was like making music again, because it's the same like you said, you bear your soul on this
Mhm.
paper, and music was that for me, because I was never hesitant to talk about my feelings and how I felt, like a lot of things, and it was like that. Like you finish this record, and night before release, you're like, oh shit, did I do? Is this really what I want to do? Is this really
Yeah.
what I want to say? Like, how's this going to come across? People going, how are they going to take it? And
Yeah.
that's what it was like with this book, because uh, there are stories in there that only a few people knew,
Right.
but it was it was very important to my journey. And like you keep pointing out, like it really is about that journey. And when people kind of read these stories, it'd be like, oh, okay, I get it,
They get it.
and
Yeah.
it's not always about the wins. It's about equally as important to experience those
Yeah.
losses. And those losses could be money, it could be losses of relationships, and the biggest losses in my life were the passing of family members and close friends, and that's why the subtitle is life, death, hip hop, because that's what really
I love
it
it.
was all about.
Oh, I love it. Um, when did you decide to enter into the domain of author? When did you decide
Uh,
a book
yeah.
was
Well,
going to
again, it was that
fell
t-
into it?
yeah. Well, because the co-author Chris, he was a writer at GQ, and I got to know him there, and now he's at Men's Health. So I always knew he was a writer, and he
Yeah.
talked to me one day about, oh, have you ever thought about writing about the history of hip hop in Australia? And I said, yeah, actually, I have. It's you know as much of a headache as that would be, I have actually thought about it, because for so many years, a lot of things weren't documented,
Yeah.
and I just thought it would have been cool to do that. And then he said, "Oh, actually, have you thought about writing about your life?"
Mm.
And I was like, "No." I was straight to the point, like, "No, I haven't." He said, "Yeah, I think it'd be an interest. I think that would be a good book." And again, like I just said, "Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't know if my story is interesting enough to put in a book."
Yeah.
And I talked to my wife about it, and talked to Chris more, and they were like, "Man, you think that because that's just your normal life. That's what you just do." But to
Right.
someone outside looking in, like that, it's not normal.
No,
It's like I've either a part of a lot of things or was a front row seat to it.
that's
So
it.
um yeah, again, I'm very fortunate to be able to have that journey and see things, and now to be able to document it, and
Absolutely.
like I tell people, it's not the history, it's just our history of it, because
That's it.
people will have their own perspective and
That's it.
experiences, and I just wouldn't want people to think this is me writing the history of hip hop here, because
Yeah.
it's not,
I totally get
you
you.
know.
I totally get you. And you know what? I
Yeah,
think like everybody who's been lucky enough to be able to say they've published a book, whether self-published or incredible publishing house such as Penguin Publishing. It's you said something really key before about Chris saying to you, would you ever want to write a book? And you go, yeah, because it hasn't been documented properly.
yeah,
I remember asking myself that 7 years ago when I wrote mine,
yeah,
and I go, but it's my interpretation of my role
yeah,
in this community right now, in this industry right now, and now yours is with the incredible achievements that you've had and that front row seat and all of that work and that mentoring that your role has taken on. You've now filled in that gap of what that almost that thesaurus of what the
Mm.
future hip hop kind of doctrine is going to look like. So, our kids, when they look back and they look at all that, this is how it begins. This is how those
Yeah,
paths go.
yeah,
You
nah,
know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah,
That's how I
yeah.
looked at it and
Hearing you
how I
put
answered
it, yeah,
it.
yeah. No, hearing you like say that, it kind of just like blows my mind even more because I never thought about it like that. Like
Yeah.
that. This is the time when there's your book and there's my book, and I know Simone's got one coming too, and this is the start of because the US have had it and the UK have had those books
So much.
forever,
Yeah.
but now this is going to be this beginning of the journey of that, and the grandkids are going to
Okay.
read it and be like, oh wow, so this is 2022, like okay, and
Yeah.
yeah, wow, that just kind of blew my mind.
That's kind of how I,
Just to be even part of that,
that's
like
it.
to
And
think, like those like generations in the future will look at our books, be like, yeah, because in 1998, pulling out quotes from our books and like thoughts and yeah, that's pretty
that's
far
it,
out.
because we didn't have anybody that,
Yeah,
before us that
yeah.
was writing books about what was going on here. It
Or
just,
if it was done by like a professor, and it was
yeah,
very kind of
yeah,
bland and
very academic.
no soul to it. Yeah, very academic
Yeah.
and
So,
just very boring.
1,000%. So, I again, when I saw your post and I was like, oh man, like this is just, yeah, I was smiling from ear to ear, and it was
Oh, awesome, thank you.
oh, 1,000%, bro. Like it was just, again, like with everything that you've done, it's just been, um, it's been with integrity, and you've done it with, thinking about what, like that legacy, that sort of legacy
Mm.
building stuff. So, again, like 1,000, congratulations, flowers to you for it, man. Like I'm so excited for what your next um your next big thing is going to be. I know and you probably can't tell us all, but we'll just have to wait. We'll wait for the next
Yeah,
post.
I just yeah. Well, it's like the book, like kind of didn't really want to, you know, like I said at the start, I kind of just keep my head down
Yeah.
and just work, and hopefully what I do speaks, because as I also pointed out before, it's still find it a bit, you know,
Yeah.
shy talking about me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're, like it's about us.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think it's going to be How the documentary.
Oh man, I don't know.
But I
I don't
think it'll be
know.
more about, yeah, about, just the community you're building, the artists you're working with, and
Mm.
maybe a little bit more music there. I do remember, and I'm going to drop this in now before we say goodbye, when you released a single, and it came on my playlist the other day, and I was smiling. It's one of my favorite tracks, and I love listening to it. Kill I Am.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, love it. Like absolutely love it. And I think that was the first time I ever really kind of got to hear the different side of Hal, not the sort of quiet, sort of shy side. There's a
Yeah, yeah,
different
yeah.
Hal in that
It was a
song.
bit cheeky, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it, man. So,
Thank
I
you.
just, like, again, just congratulations on everything that you've built and that you continue to build. I know you're a proud husband and a proud father. You've got beautiful children that you're building this legacy for. I can only imagine how the kids must feel about dad doing all these awesome
Yeah.
things.
Well, I'm still cool in their eyes, so we'll
Okay.
see. We'll see how long that goes for. But
That's
well,
it.
for now, I'm riding that wave. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's an awesome win. Before we end, I'd love to just hear your take on the current state of hip hop at the moment. Are you
Mm.
invested in everything that's happening with some of our larger artists falling from grace at the moment? Are they
Yeah.
falling
Oh,
from
man.
grace? Is it a thing that we're doing on purpose? Like, what's your thought just on the state of hip hop right now?
Yeah, it does feel like it is kind of a mess, isn't it? I think I guess that's kind of the downside of social media, because you look up to these people and you hold them in such high regard, and I guess that's kind of our fault too.
Yeah.
We're kind of any kind of, I guess, celebrity, like any, it could be an athlete, it could be whatever. We hold them in this such high regard, and we often forget that they are really just humans like us.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and like humans, we have faults, but like you kind of follow certain artists on social media and they post certain things and you're like, oh wow, where did that come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and it is sad to see, because obviously Kanye is going through something, right? Like
Major.
he's difficult because through all the kind of rants and that, there are a lot of truths. He just
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't articulate it
Yeah.
correctly, and he's always very brash about it, and that's what I kind of like about it. It's just he's so passionate and he's energetic, but then at the same time, there's no, I guess it could be a good thing or a bad thing. There's no
Yeah.
filter,
Yeah.
and and it is tough because you grow up on his music and you love his music, and
I know.
but then the current situation he's going through, and like a lot of artists, like I look up to Pete Rock. I'm not sure if you follow Pete Rock on
Love Pete.
Instagram, but just some of the things he posts, I'm
I
like,
know. I know.
really, like, and
They're all
just
in
like
our
fake
age
stuff,
group
like
too,
obviously
Hal.
fake stuff. And that's the thing. I'm thinking like, oh wow,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, but again, I think it's about, like people have to be accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
Whatever they say, they have to be accountable, and whether they need to apologize or not, that's on them. But it's partly that, it's that, and also still recognizing like these people are still human at the end of the day,
That's so
and
true.
as humans, we still need that chance for redemption. Like
Absolutely.
to be able to grow and evolve, and
Absolutely.
but at the same time, they still have to acknowledge that they made a mistake or they said something wrong. And
And I think
so,
the whole cancel culture that we're in at
yeah,
the moment, it really doesn't make um it doesn't make the job of artistry easy, right? I understand you got to hold
yeah,
people accountable, but it's just there's a very stifling feeling in the world of entertainment
yeah,
at the moment, and people are it's yeah, there's a lot going on, and I think if you're a purveyor of that culture, or you're a purveyor of that industry where you know we're a part of the entertainment industry, but what you choose, what to talk about, what to convey, what your message is at the end of the day. I don't
mm,
think a lot of people are thinking about the message anymore. I think
yeah,
just speaking, and wherever it lands, it lands.
yeah,
And whilst that's great, in terms of that sort of free thinking, it's if we're just not living in that time anymore. And I think that's the difficulty, is reining it in,
yeah,
thinking before we speak,
yeah,
because we're at such a heightened level of celebrity that it's
yeah,
untouchable, but you're still human, and you can still
yeah,
have foot in mouth, and
yeah, yeah.
and
And and you
it's
still,
on.
like, it's like people say, oh, free speech. It's like, no, yeah, free speech. You can say whatever you want, but that doesn't,
Just
you
understand.
know, well, it doesn't mean that you can't be angry how people react to it.
Yeah.
Like, because like you said, like what you saying, it'll land where it lands,
See it.
and people will kind of have a reaction to it or not.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, it's definitely an interesting time, and then kind of it's hard to even separate the artist from the
So much
person
so,
these days.
honestly.
Before you could, like, oh, but now it's just like, it's just
Yeah.
so clouded.
It's all blending in. It's all blending in.
Yeah,
But none of that for us. We are wrapping up on this incredible conversation that I'm so grateful to have had with you. Just a glimpse into the life of Hau. There's so much more, and I guess people need to buy the book to find out more.
yeah, man.
So
Get
let us
get
know.
get down to the gritty of it. And the book, The King is out now, and thank you very much for your time and having me. on Miss Hennessy. Like, we want to give you your flowers as well. Like, I appreciate your time, not only today, but for the years that have gone by. Your contribution to the music and culture, and watching you evolve as well has been a pleasure. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, brother. I really appreciate you. And yeah, always, man, always. You've always, had and made time for so many people, regardless of what, stature, whatever achievements, and that's what it's all about. It's that the love of hip hop sans ego, right? Like it's such an egotistical
Yeah,
industry and such an egotistical genre of
it
music.
is.
And to be in it and
Yeah,
not
and
have the
sometimes you
ego,
do have to. Sometimes you do have to draw from it, like in
do.
order to kind of survive,
That
But it's
balance.
that fine balance,
Yeah,
Yeah.
1000%. I get it, but I'm really proud of you, and I'm excited for the next level. And everyone, go out there, pick up a copy of King. It's listen, this man has done incredible things and is destined for a great many more. So congratulations and thank you for your time, brother. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, sis. Bless you.
You too.